biggest scam on the planet. It's a complete lie. What I'm going to share with you is going to piss you off. Less than 1% of beef sold in the US is truly grass-fed. This whole idea of grass-fed is just filled with loopholes all over the place. In 2016, the USDA dropped the official definition of grass-fed. All of the cows are grass-fed. It's the last 3 to 6 months where they're fed other things, like grains and some other ingredients that I had no idea. Over 99% of all the beef that people are buying is not fully grass-fed, despite what it says on the label. There is a tremendous amount of beef sold to America from other countries. And with a little bit of processing, like packaging the beef, it now becomes a product of the US. In other words, this country of origin labeling rule was repealed, which means revoked, for both beef and pork. Here's just another example of the lack of transparency where, well, at least if it's from America, it's probably healthier when it's actually not even coming from America. And by the way, as a side note, did you know that when you eat a burger from a fast food place, the number of cows that hamburger comes from literally can be over 100 different sources because they have this entire processing plant where they're getting meat from all over the place. What people need to realize is what we're talking about is a cow that's very sedentary, that is fatty. And the reason why it's tender is because it has barely any collagen. And without collagen, it's very, very tender. People do like marbled meat that's tender, but what they don't want to know about is how that animal is raised, because what I'm going to tell you now is literally going to make you fall off your chair. And it's what these animals actually eat. You might think, well, grains. Well, it's probably a bucket of whole grains, pretty healthy. No, they actually feed these animals in the feedlot something called DDGS. And that stands for dried distillers grain with solubles, AKA the waste product for making ethanol. They take dead corn, which is field corn. It's inedible. You can't eat it. What are they going to do with this GMO waste product filled with glyphosate? It's basically the toxic byproduct from making ethanol. And what I found out is because of the subsidies, taxpayers' contribution to this, the cost for 1 metric ton of this waste material that is fed to the animals is roughly $150. Now do you see why they can make so much profit on this? Because what they're trying to do is they need to put on about 600 pounds of extra weight on that cow. And the only way they can do it is with something so cheap, $150 per metric ton. Crazy. So that's the base. And then they add a little fiber. They add limestone, some synthetic vitamins and minerals. And then they add something else called monensin. It's an antibiotic. Antibiotics are used on a regular basis in feedlots in the US. And the reason why they use these antibiotics is because it increases weight gain. Even your grass-fed beef has been given antibiotics, unless it says on the label, no antibiotics. But that's not all. They also add in the US something called beta agonist. This is a medication that enhances the muscle growth to increase another 30 pounds of muscle. And it's something that mimics adrenaline. There's been some studies that show that can actually increase anxiety in humans if you consume that food. So there's 2 types of feedlots. You have one that's closed, like indoor, and they have another one that's open. Let's talk about the one that's closed first. That animal, which is 1,500 pounds, only gets a space that is 24 square feet. If I were to ask you how much that is, you might have to measure it out. But let me just tell you, a parking space that you drive your car into is 128 square feet. So let's compare that, 20 to 24 square feet to 128 square feet. So basically it's 1/6 of a parking place. Not a parking lot, a parking space. So basically you can fit 6 cows into 1 parking space. That's what they live in for 3 to 6 months. They have to make them sedentary and to add all this cheap food to gain the massive weight. So that way you can make the meat marbled and have it very tender, AKA a very sick animal. That's what you're eating. Now the open space in the feedlot doesn't get that much more space. They get roughly about 150 square feet, which is about the same size as a little bit more than that parking space that I just talked about. But again, not much space. So how do you find truly grass-fed beef? You need to look for this, 100% grass-fed, because if it just says grass-fed, it doesn't mean anything. And I highly recommend you spend a little bit more for this higher quality of meat, because that way you support the small farmer that seems to be squeezed out of this marketplace. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.